Making it easy for yourself in the kitchen means using the time you have effectively. And the one thing that can really help you do that is your freezer. My recipe for meatballs is so versatile, it can be used to make a dozen amazing dishes. One of my favorites is meatballs in fragrant coconut broth.
Having a freezer of home-cooked, delicious food ready to go can be a real lifesaver. It means you never have to compromise on flavor. These meatballs are delicious, but more importantly, they freeze so well. First off, get your pan on and start sweating off your onions and your garlic. This recipe involves making the meatballs in a classic way, but the exciting part is actually cook them in coconut milk. And it gives a really nice new dimension to a sort of soft, rich, sumptuous meatball. Chop the onion nice and finely, keeping those slices very close together. The closer the slices, the finer the onion. Pat it back down at an angle, slice down, and just chop. I want the onions nice and fine because I want some finesse to these meatballs. And the secret of a really good meatball is the texture, getting that balance right between the minced beef, the breadcrumbs, the milk, and the seasoning. A couple of cloves of garlic. Slice the garlic really nice and thinly. Nice. Pan, nice and hot, and a tablespoon of olive oil. Quite generous with the olive oil. Onions and garlic in. A little touch of salt and pepper. With your mince, open it up a little bit and sort of pat it out. Salt and pepper. For me, a good meatball is all about the softness, the texture of that rich beef, and the way it sort of melts in your mouth. You can colour it on the outside, but you want it nice and soft and sort of rich in the centre. Mix that in beautifully, and then paste it back out again. I've got some really nice dried chilli flakes. I'm going to season the onions with the chilli flakes. Chilli flakes in. Cook that out for 2 minutes. I'm going to add some milk. Take your breadcrumbs, make a little well, 3 or 4 tablespoons of milk. That makes a sort of nice, slightly doughy texture, but it lightens the texture of the meatball. Place that in. Add your onions, your garlic, and your chilli in there as well. Nice. Get your hands in there and start mixing them. If you've got the right amount of milk and breadcrumbs, it doesn't need binding with an egg. Don't make them too small. The problem with making them too small is the fact that they dry out quickly. Just the size of a golf ball. A little bit bigger. Nice. Give them a really nice tight squeeze. That stops it from breaking up.
It always pays to double the recipe and spend a bit more time making extra meatballs so you can freeze a batch ready for another time.
Give the pan a little wipe out. Don't wash out that pan. We've got that flavour from the onions and the garlic at the bottom. Get that pan nice and hot. Touch of olive oil in there. Place them at the top of your pan. Nice and gently sit them in the oil. Get a palette knife and go underneath them and just sort of tilt the pan and let the pan cook the back of the meatball. We're going to add some heat. Coriander seeds, slightly spicy and peppery, just to give a really nice flavour to the coconut milk. In. Next, some cardamom seeds. 3 or 4 onto the board, knife on. In. A little touch of turmeric into the centre of the pan. That's going to give it a really nice spicy flavour. A little pinch of cinnamon. All the time you're doing this, those meatballs are just getting tastier and tastier. A couple of dried chilies, let them infuse in that oil. And then some lemongrass. Just take the back of your knife and sort of beat it down. That starts to release all that lovely sort of fragrance. It's like someone's just let off the most amazing fragrant air freshener. In with the lemongrass. And finally, some fresh ginger. Just peel and slice, nice and thinly. Time now to turn them over and let the other half for a wonderful flavour. Chicken stock in. Bring the stock up to the boil. turn the gas up, and then add the coconut milk. And I want the coconut milk just sitting underneath the top of the meatball. Coconut milk in, and that sort of gives it that creamy richness, but it's not heavy. It's a fragrant, light richness. Before we start simmering, check the seasoning. That nice, soft texture of the meatball, but that fragrant, light richness of the coconut broth. It's just gonna cook those meatballs perfectly.
Bring the broth up to the boil, then simmer gently for 8 to 10 minutes.
Touch them with your finger. They should be slightly pliable, but slightly springy. Gas off. Gonna finish it off with something light and fresh. Zest of lime. But I want the zest on top of the meatball, sort of cut through that richness. And then finally, squeeze the fresh lime. And that just gives it that nice, zesty, amazing taste. Stir in the juice. It's got that kick and that vibrant taste. Now, the exciting part. When you come to serve it, be generous with that coconut broth. Tilt the pan. Get a good couple of ladles of the broth in. Meatballs. And that is a very delicious way of eating a old-fashioned meatball and bringing it into the 21st century. And they're just as good cooked from frozen as well. The secret to stress-free cooking is making it easy for yourself.
Here are 3 more recipes, all based on my delicious, freezer-friendly meatballs. Just defrost them before you get started.
First up, beef meatballs with orecchiette, kale and pine nuts.
Add meatballs to hot oil and brown. Meanwhile, cook orecchiette pasta. Then add chopped garlic to the meatballs. And shredded kale, a delicious green veg packed with vitamins which cooks in minutes. Cabbage is a great alternative if you can't get kale. Put in some of the cooking water from the pasta to steam through. When the pasta is cooked al dente, drain and add to the meatballs. Season, then finish with sweet buttery pine nuts and grated fresh Parmesan cheese. Meatballs with orecchiette, kale and pine nuts. From meatballs to meal in minutes. My next easy standby supper is beef meatball sandwich with melting mozzarella and tomato salsa. Top a lightly toasted roll with pan-fried meatballs. Then tear off chunks of creamy buffalo mozzarella, pile it on, and melt it under the grill. For the tangy salsa, slice sweet red onion, then add juicy diced tomatoes and roughly chopped fresh coriander. Season and drizzle with olive oil. Spoon over. Perfect in a flash. Beef meatball sandwich with melting mozzarella and a tomato salsa, a sandwich to die for. My final super easy meatball recipe is fiery meatball soup. Fry chopped onion and finely sliced garlic in hot olive oil. Add cumin seeds for warmth and add your meatballs. Cook on a high heat to get all those aromatic flavors out. Once the meatballs are browned, add hot chili paste for a spicy kick. Tinned tomatoes, dried oregano and a litre of beef stock. Then simmer. Next, add sweet corn and chopped courgettes. To finish, add hot jalapeno peppers, chopped fresh coriander and crushed tortilla chips. A one-pot meatball wonder that really packs a punch. Fiery meatball soup. One versatile meatball recipe, 4 deliciously different dishes, food that's certain to make your life in the kitchen easier and stress-free.
Amazing.
Whether you're making great food to freeze or to take straight to the table, you need to know how to shop for the best ingredients.
Next up, my shopping guide to oils.
It doesn't matter if you're baking, frying, or dressing salads, using the right oil can dramatically alter the taste and texture. Here are the most common oils and what to use them for. Sunflower oil is a good value all-rounder, nice and light for frying, baking, in dressings and spicy dishes. Groundnut or peanut oil is great for cooking on high heat as it gets really hot without burning. Sesame oil, a flavoursome, sweet and nutty oil, perfect sprinkled over Asian dishes before serving. Rapeseed oil is a healthier choice for using in salads. I love walnut oil. Fantastically fragrant, it's brilliant for salad dressings, and it gives cakes a distinctive flavour. But the oil I use most in my cooking is olive oil. To find some of the best olive oils sold in Britain, you have to go to one of the most unlikely places. An electrical shop in London's East End. Turkish-born Mehmet Murat has olive oil in his blood.
My family's produced this olive oil for centuries.
What he doesn't know about it isn't worth knowing.
The very best extra virgin olive oil is first cold pressed. It's actually pressed by stone, and then it's put through a centrifugal spinner, which spins out all the bitter waters, and then you've got just pure olive oil, cold pressed olive oil, and you've got to taste it to believe it. Pour a little sample. Slurp it, draw it in without, don't swallow it, warm it in your mouth, coat the whole of the inside of your mouth with it, and then swallow. It will go down like fruit juice, and it will leave no greasiness or oiliness in your mouth whatsoever. Absolutely sensational. Beautiful. My favourite use of any olive oils is to pour it into a bowl, room temperature, rub some wild oregano into it, and get some fresh crusty bread and just dip it. It's food on its own. Don't need anything else.
Coming up on my guide to making it easy. More simple but dependable tips.
Give that butter a little whisk. Sort of makes the mixture a little bit lighter, slightly fluffy.
My take on the ultimate baking must-haves.
These three items are so cheap, yet they are so important to great home cooking.
And a mouth-watering variation of the classic brownie.
Once it's cooled down, take it out and start slicing.